I did a video a few weeks ago about kind of the state of the game as it launched and my feelings about the game. And I figured now that we're about a month in, a little over a month in, still free to play, we would kind of give an update because I have some of my thoughts have adjusted a little bit as I've continued to play the game. So overall, I still really enjoy the game. I feel myself slowing down 0%. I'm still all in. I'm still enjoying it. I see no reason that I would quit playing it. No realistic reason I would quit playing it anytime soon. But there are some things that I think the game needs. I think I enjoy the way that the difficulty scales for the most part. I still feel the same that I did about a certain amount of the difficulty spikes. For example, normal 10-7, I think is still really unreasonable, right? The boss in chapter 10, I think from 10-6 to 10-7 is just an unreasonable difficulty spike. There's some ways to solve the problem, like if you've got Guinevere, it's much easier and like just things like that, but it's not, it just feels like a stat check almost, you know what I mean? You just have to be tanky enough and do enough damage to get through it. It's a little bit harder to solve mechanically unless you've got Guinevere, right? So like, I don't know if I think that 10-7 needs to be that hard. I know a lot of people are still stuck there. And occasionally there's just little things here and there like that. But for the most part, I appreciate it. Like I'm glad that I'm still working to get a stage 10 clear in these dungeons. I'm glad that as I'm reaching the end of some of the content that we have right now, it's still difficult and challenging and that I'm not just in the end game getting bored. You know what I mean? Now, if I was spending money, maybe I would be there, right? If I had... The biggest thing that holds me back is resources. I have plenty of champs. I've been weirdly lucky even, I feel like, as a free-to-play player. I think I'm only missing like 4 legendaries aside from Florentius. Yeah, him you can get from Arena, and then I just haven't pulled these 4, which is funny because I'm pretty sure Lancelot's my most wanted. And Merlin is like among the stronger legendaries in the game. So it's funny I don't have them yet, but we've been fairly lucky with legendaries, and then the rares are also very usable. So like we've got plenty of roster depth, but resources, trying to be reasonable with my gems. I think I bought 2 or 3 of the 150 gem energy refills yesterday just because I'm trying so hard to do so many different things. I have so many champs to develop and so much to build and so much to try to do for content and stuff that resources are definitely holding me back. So if I was spending money and I had a bigger influx of resources, I imagine we'd probably be done with at least Plane of Beast and Gorgos, and I feel like we'd probably be done with Frozen Plains as well. Cat's pretty hard. Cat's a pretty hard dungeon, so I don't know if I think we'd be done there, but I think we'd probably be done with these 3 if I was spending money. So that's something to consider, right? I think there's a decent amount of content in the game for launch. I like the variety in the dungeons as well. I really enjoy the mechanics in this game. And again, one of the things that I really appreciate is that all of the mechanics, for the most part, you can look in your roster and see solutions to the problems. I really rate that highly in these games. So there's that. I have a few thoughts on that as well, and we'll get into it a little bit later. The equipment dungeons also, I almost wish... My issue with the gear dungeons is that I think they're too hard for what they drop. I think 5-star gear needs to probably start dropping in stage 6 at the very least. At least start dropping. At least be possible to drop from here. Because the dungeon just feels too hard for what you're getting. Like, this feels way too hard to still be giving me 3-star gear. You know what I mean? I don't know that I think the gear dungeons make a lot of sense. This is possibly the only game I've ever played in this genre where the gear dungeons are arguably the least important dungeons to farm. Aside from needing crafting materials and then hoping you get lucky with crafting, I don't think I've ever played a game where the gear dungeons feel ultimately so inconsequential, which is strange. I don't necessarily even think that it's wrong. It's just very different than anything I think I've seen before. And I don't know that I agree with the drops versus the difficulty in here. I would like for these to be a little bit more important and perhaps a little bit more approachable. So that's my thoughts on those. Clan Raid seems fine. Like, you know what I mean? It's an interesting system. It's kind of cool. You get four bosses to choose from. Unless you're really unlucky. The other day we had 3 of the cat. I think I'm surprised we got through it. Forbidden Dungeon is a pretty cool mode. I like Forbidden Dungeon. I think it's interesting. I think it presents interesting challenges. I like that you can go back and auto farm stages you've already cleared, and that it's relatively important to do so. I don't have a lot of complaints about that. Favorite Dungeon's cool. Sealed Temple is interesting but very difficult. I like it. I think we've got a good amount of content for launch. Are we going to need new content soon? Yeah. Because again, I'm not spending, but there are people that are spending that are getting to the end of the game and feeling like they don't have as much to do, right? And that's something that you really can't afford to have happen. You need to figure out a way to make the end game feel fuller, like there's more to do. Arena could potentially be a little bit more interesting as well. But it's pretty good. It's pretty good for launch, right? We're a month into launch. Can't expect there to be dozens and dozens of game modes and all of those things that some of these other games have that are, 3, 4, 5 years old. So I think the game's in a pretty good place as it stands right now, but they hopefully have big plans moving forward. I also think we need some new champs, and one of the big things I'm looking out for with this game and with these devs is that when they start adding champs to this game, that it's not just legendaries. A few games fall into this trap where they'll launch and have a pretty good roster from top to bottom, but then only add legendaries moving forward. And the game very quickly becomes just about having the legendaries that they're releasing. And that is, I don't think there's a worse way to move forward than that. I think that's terrible. So there are definitely still some spaces in this game for some usable rares. For example, if we look in the equipment dungeon, recommended mark champs. If you don't have Sigrun, you're going to have to use these guys. And there's a couple of them in here that are very usable, don't get me wrong. But there needs to be a rare that can fill this role. I think there needs to be a rare that can somewhat fill every role. Now, does the rare need to be as good as Sigrun? No. But I think there should be one. I think in every role, in any of these recommended tags that you go in for any given dungeon, I think there should be at least one rare that can do it. You know what I mean? Not necessarily as effectively as the legendaries can do it, but I do think that should be a thing. That's something that's important to me. Even if I was spending money, even if I was wailing out and using only legendaries, I just still think that that's very important for the health of the game. You need to be trying to maintain some sort of balance among the rarities, in the sense that, like, there's just roles to fill in every rarity, you know what I mean? They did a really good job, too, of making the uncommons in this game usable, so I hope they don't stop adding them. I hope they don't abandon adding uncommons to the game, because, again, I just think that makes it so much more interesting and so much more fun when there's these much more obtainable champs that you can get to solve the problems. And perhaps it takes you a little longer to solve them with the rares and uncommons, but at least it's available to you. So that's probably the biggest thing I have my eye on right now, is what is going to be their formula for adding champs moving forward. If it's exclusively legendaries, I think that's going to be a real bummer, and I don't know that I think that's going to be very good for the long-term health of the game. So I'm fingers crossed that they don't do that. And then I don't think they should share a roadmap with us. I think that tends to go pretty poorly for developers when they share roadmaps. But I do hope they have one that relatively soon involves some expansion to the game, whether it be new content or just additional dungeons. I find it hard to imagine that stage 10 is going to be the last stage of these dungeons. So I imagine they'll start adding stages, maybe like, nightmare or hell versions or whatever you want to call it of the dungeons. Maybe other like brand new dungeons with different mechanics. I don't really know what it would look like necessarily at this stage in the game, but I do think that they're going to need to do something, because you don't want people reaching the end game and feeling like they have nothing to do. So beyond that, I think quality of life is pretty good in the game. They did some pretty good updates to quality of life with the last patch they put through. For example, one of the things that was kind of aggravating to me was I have all this stuff in my bag where you can like select and obtain pieces, And they've now added it where if I go try to, where's an example? Let's say I didn't have books, but I had a selector and I tried to skill her up, it would pop up and say, you have these in your inventory. Do you want to use them? And it'll automatically select the fire book, like if that was a thing. So I think that's huge. I think that's a really good quality of life. They did the same thing with energy. You can access that from the battle screen now when you're out of energy. So stuff like that I think is really handy. So that means they're paying attention to the quality of life. They're looking to make good updates. I feel pretty good about everything they're doing, and I'm pretty optimistic about how they're going to handle things. But again, I've seen this many times. I've seen games be in this position where it's like you have everything you need to succeed. You've done a really good job setting yourself up for success, and then the money starts rolling in, it seems like, and they lose their mind. And that tends to happen around the 6-month mark. So we have a little bit more time before we hit that period where I guess they'll really be put to the test. But so far, I think they're doing a really good job. I think they've made a really good game here, and I am really optimistic because I really enjoy it. I would really like to play this game long term. I would really like for this game to continue to expand and develop in a way that is interesting and fun, and have the impression that the developers are more concerned with the game being good than making money, right? I get that they're all businesses and the goal is to make money, but if you can tell when they're blatantly prioritizing money over everything else versus when they're prioritizing making the game good so that people want to spend money. And when you do that, I think that's just so much better long term. I mean, look at Summoner's War. Summoner's War has been around for over 10 years now, going over 10 years. And it's still got a solid player base and a pretty good reputation because they've continued to like improve the game, do what's best for the game. And I'm sure they still make plenty of money. So it can be done. You can make money without trying to force people to give you money. So hopefully that's what we'll see with this game, because again, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's really good. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe I'll do another video talking more specifically about what anything else that I think the game might need. The big thing for me is the champs. I can have patience for a lot of other stuff. I can deal with a lot of other stuff. If we get like, 3 champ drops in and they've only added legendaries, I think that's going to start to be a problem for me. I think that's going to be a little bit of a bummer. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I'm interested to know what you guys think about the game. How are you feeling about it? Are you free to play? Are you a spender? Are you in the end game? Do you feel like there's stuff to do in the end game? Are you bored in the end game? Are you enjoying the journey? Are you enjoying the difficulty? I'm very interested in your experience in the game at this point as well. So be sure and let me know in the comments. Other than that, I guess we'll get out of here for today. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next one.